All right, today's second review is going to be of Pearl, which is the second installment in the X movie series. So this is like kind of like the origin story of Pearl, the older lady from the first movie. Now I didn't like this film nearly as much. It just didn't have the same kind of feeling as the first movie. Like it didn't really give you the whole eerie feeling that the first movie gave you, and I felt like a lot of it in this movie, they kind of did a lot of stuff for like shock value almost, just to make it kind of go like ew, in a sense. Like especially the scarecrow scene. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. I'm not even going to go into detail about that, but yeah, this movie I only gave a 5 out of 10 to. It just wasn't quite the same as the first one. And I'm not saying like not knocking the special effects or anything because they were just as good as the first movie, but I just felt like the story was yeah not quite as good. And I think I watched these two films like quite a few years apart the first time I watched them, so maybe I had forgotten a lot of what was in the first movie. But anyway, yeah, it just wasn't as good as the first one for sure. Uh, but yeah, 5 out of 10, and we'll go over the cast list. Obviously, this one wasn't quite as long. So we had Mia Goth as Pearl, who I guess is trying to become like an up and coming actress, kind of like the same thing that Maxine was doing in the first movie. So it's almost like Maxine was like the spitting image almost of Pearl in a sense. And then we had David Corn Sweat as the projectionist, Tandy Wright as Ruth, Matthew Sunderland as father. So Ruth and yeah, obviously father would have been Pearl's father. Emma Purro as Mitzi, who was Howard's sister, as well as kind of, I guess, in a same sense, Pearl's best friend. And then Alistair Sewell, who played Howard, who was Pearl's husband. So this film took place many years before, obviously, Pearl gets much older, as well as Howard. So Pearl seems to have like big dreams at the very beginning of like bigger dreams than just working on the farm with her for her parents or with her parents. And her dad seems to be sick with something. I'm not exactly sure what, but they seem to be giving him a lot of medicine for whatever illness he has, and they're really like super protective. Every time every time Pearl goes out into town, her mother tells her, you know, to like wear a mask, cover up her face, and not bring any more sickness or illness or anything back to the house, right? Like it's every time she comes to the house or comes back to the house, she has to like wash her hair or bathe herself or yeah, like basically clean off all the germs. I think that was like her mother's terminology was don't bring back any germs. Um, and of course, her mother is very stingy with the money. Counts like every penny, I guess, basically because they're not. They're kind of on hard times. So her parents are German, so they must have moved to the States, obviously, probably to escape the war. I would imagine. Now, when exactly they moved there, I don't know because this story takes place in 1918. So this would have been near the this would have been near the end of the First World War, right? Or just yeah, I believe. Don't quote me on that because I might be wrong, but I do believe it would have been yeah, it would have been the First World War, right? Yeah, definitely. Um, because yeah, Howard was off at war, so that would have been the First World War because there was nothing. Yeah, there wasn't any wars after that between World War One and World War Two, was there? I don't think so. Maybe I'm gonna have to look that up. Check my history books again, but I don't believe there was. Um, so Pearl seems to be kind of fascinated with film in this movie, and also dancing. Like she doesn't really know exactly what career path she's gonna go down, but she wants to be a star. That's basically her whole thing. So she ends up meeting one of the guys, the projectionist who works at the movie theater after she has watched a film, and he gives her a piece of the like a slide out of the film, and he just says, you know, he can splice it back together. It's only one frame. Nobody's ever going to notice anyway. So she ends up losing that in the field, and that's the whole scarecrow scene. We won't even talk about that. So then Mitzi and her mother come over to, I guess, give Pearl and Ruth food, because they think that they might be kind of short on food. And I think Mitzi's, like, Howard's family seems to be quite wealthy, so obviously they have no problem delivering food to everybody. It seems that they have, like, a lot to give, right? And of course, Pearl's mother, you can hear her on the porch, like, we don't take any charity, which is kind of silly because, your families are basically together, so why wouldn't you just, accept an offering from the other family? But her mother is very strict about, I guess, not having anything that isn't from their farm with them. Yeah. But close to the beginning, you can kind of see, like, Pearl's, like, slight psychopathic tendencies, because she's killing the animals in order to feed the alligator, who now we know his name is Beta. So she's named him. And that is basically her number one source of what she takes all of her victims to. So it seems that she starts out with the animals, and then it kind of progresses into people as the movie goes along. So, yeah, she kind of has a very, like, slow descent into madness in this movie, for sure. So I thought she was going to be sneaking away to the dance audition, but I guess she is sneaking away to the theater. And it seems that she started, like, some sort of an affair with the projectionist. So I guess while Howard's at war, she felt the need to cheat on him, which, yeah, I guess she kind of, like, comes full circle at the end of the movie, like, explaining that she's not really the best person in the world, and she's done some things she's not proud of. Obviously sleeping with the projectionist, but then she kills him too, and she also kills her mother and father, and then she ends up killing her best friend at the end of the movie. So just a wild ride, as far as that goes. So at first she's, like, taking care of her father, but she kind of gets sick of it, right? And then eventually she does tell her mother that she's going to go to this dance audition, and her mother is adamant that she doesn't do it. I guess it kind of, you can kind of see, like, a pattern here, because her mother wasn't able to do everything she wanted to do in her life, ended up having to take care of the father, and then when Pearl got old enough, she kind of just, shoved it all on Pearl to be the one to take care of her own dad. Instead of Ruth taking care of her husband, now she was just kind of taking the burden and putting it onto Pearl, like, hey, I don't have to deal with this anymore. You're old enough to take care of your father now, so you can do it instead of me. And then I can focus on more of the things that I wish I could have done. And, I mean, at that point, Pearl's mother is probably a little too old to be thinking about that kind of stuff anyway. But also at the same time, I guess she kind of wanted a little bit of freedom, I suppose. But yeah, to just kind of put all of that burden on somebody else and not really look like you care about, how your child's life goes is a little sad. So of course it seems that, Ruth is shutting down Pearl at every chance she can get, and she does tell her that she'll fail. Like, regardless of how Pearl thinks things are going to go, her mother just says you're going to fail. They end up having a big fight. Ruth gets lit on fire, and then I think that was when she actually did die. Because I think a lot of what happens afterwards is just Pearl kind of hallucinating things about what her mother is doing. So, yeah, I believe, she gets lit on fire, and then Pearl tries to put her out, but then Pearl, like, drags her to the basement. So I think she was already dead by that point. And then, of course, the next day, she gets a ride back with the projectionist to her house. He starts getting a little nervous as things kind of seem a little out of sorts, obviously, with Pearl. She ends up having some sort of, like, wild mental breakdown in front of him, and then she ends up killing him with the pitchfork. So, yeah, and then she shoves his car into the lake. I think that was when she went back into the house and ends up smothering her father, so she kills her father, too. which was just absolutely crazy because it seemed like her and her father, even though he was sick, had a pretty close relationship, from what I could gather, even before he fell ill. Um, so, of course, then Pearl goes to the dance audition, pretends like nothing had ever happened. She doesn't get the part, and then has another breakdown on the stage about, how she's supposed to be a star and, give her one more chance, like help her out, sort of thing. But all the people are kind of like looking at her like, oh my God, what kind of person did we bring in to do this audition? And of course, they said they're looking for somebody not quite like her, somebody different, like a different kind of dance, I guess, and somebody more blonde. So, of course, what they're kind of pointing towards, which is going to be Mitzi, who ends up getting the part. And then they go back to Pearl's house together, and they're sitting down at the table, and Pearl kind of like lays out this whole big speech about how, she was always trying to treat Mitzi good, and uh, always, not getting the same in return, I guess. Like, she felt like she was always the lesser of the two people, I suppose. And then she goes on to talk about having like a miscarriage and how she cheated on Howard. And then she talks about how she killed everybody, like right in front of Mitzi, like confesses the whole thing. And then, of course, tells Mitzi not to lie to her about getting the part. Now, I don't really think Mitzi was. I think Mitzi was serious that she didn't actually get the part, but because Pearl's just being the way she is with her, she just says, it'll be great to tour the state and go to all these different cities, and she hopes that Pearl can make it to all of the shows. Now, Pearl says, you're not going to say anything, right? And Mitzi says yes, that she has to get home now because her mother's going to start to worry. And then when Mitzi gets out in the driveway, Pearl follows her out and grabs the axe out of the wood and chases her down the driveway, and then also kills Mitzi. So yeah, I think at that point, Pearl had completely lost it. You could just kind of tell. And then shortly after that, you can see like how Pearl disposed of Mitzi's body, again feeding it to Beta at the end of it all. And then shortly after that, Howard does come home, and he finds both her parents dead at the dinner table. And then all of a sudden, he's greeted by Pearl, who says, I'm so happy you're finally home. And then, like, the whole partial credit scene, until it, like, kind of fades out to black, is just Pearl smiling to the camera. So that was a little creepy at the very end. I guess kind of gave you that little sense of, like, eeriness near the end of the movie, but it just wasn't enough to make this movie nearly as good as the first one. So I'm hoping the third one, Maxine, kind of bounces back a little bit in this series, at least for me, because yeah, I just wasn't enjoying the second film as much as the first one, and that's why I gave it a 5 out of 10. I'm not saying it didn't have its moments, but yeah, it just felt, yeah, it just didn't have the same feel as the first movie. I just didn't find it quite as enjoyable as the first one. The story just wasn't quite as enjoyable, and yeah, the characters. Yeah, I just think it was a very different feeling movie compared to the first one, and not, yeah, like not as many. It didn't have the same like kind of, I guess, campy, like old school slasher feel to it as the first one did. And some of the scenes were just a little goofy, like, how could somebody not get away? Like, especially the ending one there where Mitzi is running, and instead of just, running away and, not looking back, she's crying out for help and then not paying attention where she's going and trips. And, like, that's the thing that gets her killed. I'm like, okay, that's a little over the top probably, because she could have easily run away, but yeah, it just, or, at least tried to fight a little bit, but she like puts up absolutely no fight, and, doesn't even look like she's trying to run away from the situation. It's almost like she's accepting her own death in a way. But anyhow, other than that, yeah, I guess I will see you guys in the next review. Bye bye for now.